Marfoogle TV live in 3, 2. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. Let's get right into it. South Korea scrambles jets as Russian Chinese planes enter the defense zone. Again, this is the same time that we're learning, of course, that U.S. ended up going into Venezuelan airspace. It's just odd timing, don't you think? South Korea's Air Force scrambled jets as 9 Chinese and Russian military aircraft briefly entered its ADIZ, or Air Defense Zone, on Tuesday morning, military officials said. 7 Russian and 2 Chinese military aircraft entered the Korea Air Defense Identification Zone, or the KADIZ, again above waters east and south of the country. So again, it says an air defense zone, of course, is not a territorial airspace, but a broader region in which countries request foreign aircraft to identify themselves for security reasons. China and Russia have entered the KADIZ without notification on numerous occasions since 2019 while conducting joint aerial training. In the most recent incident, 11 planes from Russia and China flew into the KADIZ, of course, in November of 2024. It has picked up in recent years. Of course, in the last 2 years, they have been doing tons and tons of drills together. Obviously, we cover all of these because they could play a smaller piece in a bigger puzzle later on. But as of right now, it's something that we are not too alarmed by. We're going to talk about what we are alarmed by, and again, what is going on right now. Of course, there is a lot. We're going to talk about the deadline for Christmas. We're going to talk about the other countries that are now involved, whether they want to be or not. And we're going to talk about, of course, everything else that just transpired when we come back. Right after our disclaimers. See you in a second. Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. All right, we're going to go over a lot today, so make sure that you need to be tuned in. But if you don't like scary movies, don't tune in to scary movies. Somebody in the chat says, stop giving out dates. We're not giving out a date. The president is. It's a deadline, and it is absolutely a deadline. So we cover it. We have never given out dates. We're not somebody who's saying, I'm a prophet, and I think that the war is going to start here. I have my own opinion, which I do think that the war is going to start next year in the late of December or around that time period when China can take Taiwan. If at the very least, at the very last, it would be 2027. And those are dates based on what we believe. And that's going to go further into today's episode because this is a lot to go over in a short amount of time. Before we do so, let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
All right, so let's talk about the next story, which is Porsches across Russia suddenly stop working.
Well, I mean, look, at first you're like, Porsches, who really cares? Like, who drives those? But look, get the story. Hundreds of Porsche cars have stopped working in Russia due to an issue with a satellite-based security system. According to local reports, owners reported various issues with the vehicles, including not being able to start the engine or shutting it down soon after they get it started. Others said they have been locked out of their cars. The root cause of the issue is not yet known, though a representative of Russia's largest dealership group told the media that it could be an act of sabotage. it's possible this was done deliberately, according to that spokesperson. So look, this is kind of going back to that whole idea about everything being connected, everything being electronic. You think about like what could happen. Could a hacker do this? Could a nation state do this? Could it be used, like you're showing on screen, Adam, in that movie? Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the movie now, but where they brought all the Teslas and they sort of blocked off the roads with them because they took them over and they took control of them. This is a version of that, right?
Exactly. And again, this is Leave the World Behind that's on screen, a fictional movie. This is something that, of course, we have talked about the possibility of happening. This is also mentioned in not only Pentagon documents, but also the White House as far as the National Defense Strategy, or the National Defense Strategy last year, as far as talking about this, because this is one of the things that they are trying to defend against. Actually having these highly high-tech cars and things that now have 160 average chips in them from being fried and becoming essentially bricks, right? Something like this in this movie. This movie, of course, was made by Obama, both of the Obamas, Michelle and Barack, and they actually added things in that were not in the book. One of the things here is they actually added this scene with all of the Teslas that ended up essentially driving themselves. And one thing that people don't realize is this is right before a bridge. So they all smashed, crashed, and essentially stopped. Well, this is actually something that is quite serious. And in interviews talked about how much he hands-on was in on this film. He actually added things that would be more realistic in a situation like that. So as far as people going, oh, well, that's totally unrealistic, it's actually something that they worry about. Elon, of course, clapped back and said, oh, well, that won't happen, and we won't have that happen to our cars. But then again, this is what we're seeing with these Porsches, that there's possibly some angle here where those could. Or any other car. What about the 5 or 6 other self-driving cars that are coming, right? So again, this is something that is very, very crazy. All right, and then let's see here. And then we're going to go into Trump. Zelensky must accept peace deal because Ukraine is losing. And again, has given him by Christmas. Again, there is a Christmas deadline on this. Donald Trump has warned Ukraine to accept his peace proposal because Russia is winning the war. The U.S. president suggested his approach to settling the war was in contrast to the Europeans who claimed he would let Kiev fight until they drop. In a wide-ranging interview, Mr. Trump accused continental leaders of failing to adequately support Ukraine, branding some of them real stupid, as well as claiming Sadiq Khan's London had been ruined by unchecked, unvetted migration. His scathing criticism of Europe emerged after Stormer ended up hosting Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky, France Emmanuel Macron, and Germany's Friedrich Merz for a crisis talk over how to end the war on Monday. Now, one thing that is also in that national security strategy is talk about how Europe has done itself. And essentially what they talk about is, hey, these NATO allies not only need to step up and take on their own responsibility, but one thing in the future they worry about in this NSS is the fact that, well, now that the actual people that are changing and the actual makeup of Europe is changing, they say as the future comes on and not so many are actually European and the majority becomes non-European, will they still agree with what they signed as far as the NATO rules that they signed originally? Not to mention, it talks about allies and it talks about possible backstabbing of allies and keeping them in our circle and not having to worry about, looking over our shoulders with allies. If you look at it in detail, that NSS says a whole lot, and that's why people are still talking about it a week later. Again, very, very, very crazy. Butternut, Texas Tony, nice to see you. Weather and Aviation, again, I would highly recommend going and watching Weather and Aviation channels. Again, I wouldn't go to Weather and Aviation and think, oh, I'm going to see, camera reviews. Again, you're here, so again, don't complain. Bobby Sue, Jake Malone, Julie Pilkerton, nice to see you. General Sorrow, we've got R.D. Lazau, we've got Jick, we've got, of course, Daryl Calhoun, old school Fugel fam. Sean, we've got Brian Loves Bacon, hello all, nice to see you. And Michael Coslow, Briar Patch, and Frank Walls, nice to see you as well. WIS Gen 273, nice to see you. And Big Chase. Nice to see everybody, old school Fugel fam, that have been here for years. Mr. Doshanine, of course, Rochelle Cooley, nice to see you, and thank you for being a member as well. All right. Now, before we move on, make sure to go check out EMP Shield if you haven't already. This is a device that can not only protect you, but can also protect your devices, your trucks, cars, motorcycles, boats, generators, modems, of course, Starlink systems, anything that you want to protect against not only an adversarial attack from an EMP, but also a CME or a Carrington level event from the sun. Then make sure to go check out this device. This is the same technology that is not only in the DHS, Department of Homeland Security Resilience Report, but this is the same company that is now outfitting agencies like DHS, DOW, Department of War, FBI, of course, the Air Force, and many others. So go check it out. Again, if they're quietly preparing themselves, I don't know why it is crazy for civilians to do so as well. Again, there is a active push and propaganda to tell you everything is totally fine and don't prepare. Why? When they're constantly telling you something's wrong, why would they tell you not to prepare? I think that's quite crazy, but I think it's because they plan on you being dependent on the system. Again, don't be that person that's dependent on the system. Again, make sure you realize that EMP Shield is that Black Friday sale plus our $50 off. Marfooglenews.com/EMP. And then Kremlin denies Putin wants to restore USSR, dismisses NATO attack claims as nonsense. Dex, do you want to go over what the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Tuesday said, remarks by Chancellor Friedrich Merz?
Yeah, and that's Friedrich Merz of Germany regarding Russia's alleged preparation to attack NATO. And he specifically said they're nonsense and that the president does not want to restore the Soviet Union. The actual quote is regarding the preparation for attacking NATO. This is complete nonsense. Once again, I urge everyone to refer to the primary source, our President Vladimir Putin. He said this was following last week, his visit to India. Putin also refuted the accusations of planning any attacks against Europe. So commenting on another statement by Merz claiming that the Russian president wants to restore the erstwhile Soviet Union, with which was dissolved in 1991, Peskov said Putin has no such intention. This does not correspond to reality. Vladimir Putin does not want to restore the USSR because it's impossible, and he himself has repeatedly spoken about this, he stressed. Peskov added that such statements demonstrate Merz's disrespect towards the Commonwealth of Independent States, the country, the CIS of Russia. Asked if Putin plans to meet with the Hungarian delegation visiting Moscow led by the Foreign Ministry, Peter Arto, Peskov said no such contacts have been scheduled. No, there are no such plans for these days. So look, the Europeans are always painting this horrible picture of Russia, and Russia is always painting the picture that, no, that's not what we want. Now, it's kind of hard on one hand because, at one point it's like, hey, we're just doing a drill. And then a year later, they're rolling into Ukraine. So, but if you take them at face value, they said they only wanted their portion of the land that was originally Russia's. They didn't want to take the rest of Europe. But the rest of Europe seems to think that Russia just wants to take everything back to the way it was. And that is part of the scare tactic, or at least the getting the public involved on why it's important to be ready to defend against this mysterious Russian invasion that's coming any day now to Europe. And I say a lot of that with a bit of sarcasm because they really are pushing this narrative, they being Europe, and less Russia. Russia's not pushing that narrative at all. Doesn't mean that Russia's not going to actively do it. Doesn't mean that it's not possible. It's just when you look at the narratives and who's pushing it, it's not Russia.
And the craziest part is the U.S. in every single way is essentially saying we are going to be Fortress America at this point, that we are locking down everything, that we are going to be, America first all the way, and that this is going to be the homeland we protect and no others. This is shown in many movements of our troops. Our troops are not only, in many cases, being pulled back and put on other things, but we are revamping all sorts of World War II era islands and different programs. Since yesterday, I got 2 different emails from people stating that it is much bigger than I even thought, and gave me a few things to look up as far as the different projects that the U.S. is doing. and actually referenced a couple key points in that NSS too, which I actually kind of skipped over and didn't realize that is totally part of it. As far as that they are revamping everything. It's part of the first 8 or 9 pages of it, talking about essentially, what we need to do to get to here, to get to there, what we want as a country. And essentially, they are revamping all sorts of stuff. We also talked about last night about how a whistleblower, and gosh, the more you look at that whistleblower, it's quite crazy that she, the woman who was Urban Housing and Authority, the former minister of that, was essentially saying that the U.S. has been secretly building over 170 underground bunkers for those in the top echelons. And money, confirmed money, going into Mount Weather and others, basically beefing up all of these underground bunkers. That's kind of creepy when you consider what the heck is going on. Now, I don't think it's because we're going to get nuked to High Kingdom. I think it is because of cyber events. I think that the rich and elites want to be underground when all of the cyber stuff will happen. And I do believe there's going to be cyber events. It's something that we still have a vulnerability in. In fact, it's one of our worst vulnerabilities. Our grid and our cyber infrastructure, which is completely infiltrated. Heck, not even to mention, of course, the physical infiltration that happened into our country over 4 years of course, people coming in just to get a better life and non-uniformed soldiers hiding in between them. So yeah, very, very crazy stuff. Thank you, Parker Craft. Thank you so much for being a member for 18 months. Hi, all, still here, been fighting cancer, but alive. I'm so sorry, and I'm praying for you, Parker Craft. And as you probably well know, I went through my best friend's cancer and was with him the entire way. Unfortunately, he had the worst possible kind you could ever have, and it got worse. But I have also went through my other friend who was a bodyguard. He actually got through it, and my other friend just got through it. So again, there is a lot of hope out there, especially now. And then Kremlin denies Putin wants to restore USSR, dismisses NATO attack, again, as nonsense. Obviously, huge claims by Europe. And then Trump team sees Europe's erasure. And that is, again, pointed out in that NSS. Again, they say a new national security strategy berating Europe has triggered a wave of acrimony across the Atlantic, enraging and dismaying European officials who say the document has turned the administration's vitriol against European democracies into formal policy. President Donald's push to halt the war in Ukraine in terms of favorable to Russia and European Union's announcement Friday of roughly $140 million fine against X for violating the bloc's digital rules have fueled the fire, pushing transatlantic relations to their lowest point since Trump returned to the White House in January. Elon Musk, the owner of X, is calling for abolishing the EU, and Trump supporters are rallying against the 27-nation bloc. Again, European officials describe the regulations as a matter of sovereignty and say that they are trying to stop abuses by behemoth American technology companies. One of those being, of course, X, right? Tensions erupted after the U.S. strategy painted the EU as a bigger threat than Russia or China and said Europe risks civilizational erasure because of the migration and progressive social policies. The document lays bare the depth of the rift in the 80-year-old Western alliance. Now, it does say, essentially, the people that signed the original NATO, well, those people won't soon be in Europe. By statistics, they're looking at how many, now the majority, what the majority will be in a certain amount of years will not be the same kind of people that would agree with the original NATO agreements. So there's a point to be made about what they're saying in the NSS. If the actual data that Europe itself is providing, then that's something to think about. Not trying to debate this whole NSS plan in itself, but there is an aspect of truth to a lot of it, especially with what's going on right now. There are certain cultures and certain peoples that absolutely would not, if they were in charge, put themselves in any kind of NATO situation. So again, Dex, what did you think when you saw this?
So look, we live in a binary world. Everything is, ones or zeros, yes or no, black or white. There's not a lot of gray. And so you have the East versus the West. You have the the BRICS, the China, Russia, India, um, you know, South Africa, whatever, Venezuela, put them all together, all their allies against the West, the US and Europe. Well, what's going to happen if we get to a place where Europe has splintered off and they're no longer an ally of the US? They're doing their own thing. They may not be necessarily an enemy, but they may not necessarily be an ally. And it's interesting when you look at what's happening here. It could just be as simple as they're just using their words, which they like to do, and we can write all this off, and they'll be hugging Trump next week like they do. But they're really pushing back now, saying this is a big attack against Europe from the U.S., and the U.S. is trying to isolate itself off of Europe. And if that's the case, then what happens? I mean, I could easily see, UK it's in that area, but it's not part of the European Union. So the UK remains a US ally. It always will be. It's super close. But, what happens to the rest of the EU? And what happens to those other, countries there? So it could be really interesting, because what are they going to do? Go partner up with Russia? They're the ones saying they're going to war with Russia. So very interesting shift here. If this gets any wings to it, I think it's probably just a bunch of hyperbole at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think he's more saying that in the future this is going to be something that's a whole lot different, and most of our viewers in Europe and in the UK and in London, they believe that the sediments are there, that they do not recognize parts of their homeland, right? So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. All right, and then thank you everybody for being in here already. Based Ranger, thank you Michael J. Cheater, thank you author Lori Ann Smith. Again, thank you Scrappy Dabby Doo, and of course Texas Tony. Thank you so much. And Shirley Millward just hit 4 months as a member. Who will be the? Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Shirley Millward. WIS Gen 273, prayers to all the Marfoogle family that needs prayers tonight. Special prayers to all military, and happy birthday to the Marfoogle family that needs birthday wishes. I love it. Jake Malone, Kevin GQ, and Quads and Drones, nice to see you. And then we have Beans and Frank in the house. Nice to see you again. And Dr. Fatbird. So many awesome people. Thank you. And then Australia launches youth social media ban. It says will be the world's first domino. Now, this has been getting a lot of buzz right now because this is a huge deal. This is something that is a bad domino to fall. Dex, do you want to explain why? And we've talked about this before. This is not good.
Yeah. So look, on one hand, it's like there's this whole feel good, like, oh yeah, it'd be great because social media is really damaging our children and we need that. We don't want them on at such a young age, et cetera, et cetera. But what this means is, how do you enforce it? And the only way to enforce it is to create a system by which you can prove your age if you're not a child, if you're an adult, if you're anybody in this particular case over the age of 16. So basically, they are about to force off a million, 1 million, 1 million social media accounts in Australia that are kids under the age of 16. They're all going to get deactivated, is what they're saying. So that's about to happen. Social media companies will have to take the reasonable steps to ensure that they're under 16 in Australia cannot set up accounts on their platform, and that existing accounts are deactivated or removed. So what's going to happen is either they're going to get majorly fined, these social media companies, or they're going to leave Australia, which neither of those two things are going to happen. So they're not going to pay the money, and they're not going to leave because they want to make money. So what they're going to do is they're going to go partner with an identity company that will allow people to prove their identity. And we see this in the UK. We've seen this in lots of other places that are starting to roll out these age restrictions. And then what happens now is all of us adults have to prove our identity. And it's not just prove our age, but it's prove our identity. And they tell us, oh, well, don't worry, it's just safe. But in reality, what you're doing is you're now tying these government laws, government regulations directly to your identity and to your online activity. And the only way you're allowed to go look at a website that has information that's not going to be appropriate for a kid over the age of 16, like a social network or any other type of, maybe even a rated R type environment, you are going to have to give up your identity to go see that now.
which is complete BS. This is how they start the digital ID. The every single person online has it, because once you give an inch, they take a mile, and once you give in a little, they're going to say, oh, well, it's not that much more to do this, or it's not much more to do that. We're already doing this, and we've already found they will have good results and good stats. And of course, any stat company that they can pay to give the proper cherry pick stats will be able to say, hey, this is a good in overall, but this is bad for everybody else. Again, they're not going to pick the stats that show, what it's doing to us, because those stats don't matter to them. They would much rather have every single person online absolutely tracked down to the frickin' T. What do you guys think about this? Do you think that this should happen, or do you think that this, again, should be somehow reversed? Let me know. Definitely control, says Kendall Pate, of course. And, and now you've got to have it on your right hand or forehead. Dustin Royal, well, some places in the world have already kind of went that way, at least voluntarily. And then federal judge orders release of old Ghislaine Maxwell files about Jeffrey EpiPen, right? So we have this also coming out. They said a federal judge in New York on December 9th ruled that the Department of Justice, the DOJ, can unseal records in the case against Jeffrey EpiPen, accomplice Ghislaine, weeks after the passage of a law that requires the government to disclose case records related to both EpiPen and Ghislaine. Again, they said that they issued the ruling after the DOJ in November asked two judges in New York to unseal grand jury transcripts and exhibits from Maxwell and EpiPen's case, which I believe, isn't that when we saw the beginning of the pictures of the dentist chair and all of that? Isn't that where that came from?
That came from the Democrats in Congress. Like, I don't know where it came out of. They just brought it out.
Almost like they're like, here's a picture of a dentist chair. This is our creepy hint. Again, and then, of course, you have last month President Donald signed the EpiPen Files Transparency Act, which is so crazy that this guy was so infamous that he's got this whole debate whether to basically unseal his creepy network or not, that he has his own act put into law, meaning that the records could be made public within roughly 10 days. The law requires the DOJ to provide the EpiPen-related records to the public in a searchable format. Now, I've talked to a lot of people that almost believe that this Epstein thing has just basically been pushed to the very brink, and anytime they need people to just look sideways and to get arguing again, is they mention this stuff. This has become as much of an arguable kind of platform, and it's funny because this is one where everybody's arguing to release it, right? All of the civilians. So it's something that almost unites people, and it's something that everybody wants released. And it's almost like they keep doing this so people bicker about this instead of, looking beyond this. Now, I'm saying this is a huge deal, but most people are so tired of hearing about it because they never actually release anything real. They're just a bunch of BS. And of course, a lot of people believe that they won't release it because of how many people, including the very top echelons of our country, will be, in the pile with them. So it's like, are we ever going to get any truth? We're getting a little bit too old for this bull, right? Nothing new. Again, they point out, nothing new is ever being put out. It's just absolutely crazy. And then thank you so much, Shirley Millward. Again, thank you for the super. I appreciate that. Thank you. And again, make sure to thank Shirley in the chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. And then we have, we're going to talk about the shockwaves through Latin America. But after I mention, make sure to go check out Inergy. This is our recommendation for a solar generator. Our affiliates do not rotate every day. We don't rotate 50 different, hand-picked affiliates by some third company. Again, all of the affiliates that we pick, we believe will help you through a disaster or make you more comfortable. Again, I'm sure we could make a whole lot more if we rotated out cheap Chinese products every week, but again, we don't. These are things that we believe in. This generator is one of them. It is steel reinforced. It is, again, the last 29 or 28. I think that it's down even from the other day. Again, this is a pool that's not just the Fugel fam. This is 30 or 28 left in all of sales. They are down on their last batch, and their first batch of American-made batteries all the way through. So this is, again, a company we've been with for years and years. We could not sell them for at least a year because of their huge contract with the U.S. Army. This is the same generator that the U.S. Army gets, and because of that, they actually have a bunch of specifications, which that means they had to move their battery making in the United States. Now, here's the cool kicker about the last 28 or whatever is in stock now, is that these are the first of the American-made batteries, but they have not raised the prices. The next batch that they do make that's going to be available to the public is going to be a lot more because they're making the batteries entirely in the US now. They were made in China and front-loaded, basically the software loaded in the US to make sure there was no back doors. Now they're completely, the batteries are completely made here. So this is a huge deal, especially if you do not want any kind of chance that your generator is going to be turned off remotely by the country that controls a huge monopoly on this technology. So go over to marfooglenews.com/energy and make sure to use the code Marfoogle to not only get several $100s off, but to get that last batch and the first batch. You'll be able to get them in the future, but they're going to be a whole lot more. Again, now American labor, all of those things going into that. marfooglenews.com/energy. Make sure to use the code Marfoogle. All right. And again, that's modular. You can add batteries, you can subtract, you can take it to a work site or campsite. And then Trump sends shockwaves through Latin America as he hints 2 more nations are in his sights for a Venezuela-style, crackdown. Again, Donald did not rule out expanding U.S. military operations beyond Venezuela to Mexico and Colombia. The president said in a recent interview that he would consider using military force on 2 U.S. allies in Latin America, being Colombia and Mexico, which Colombia's president has been basically calling the president a pedo, which is pretty nuts that they're even still allies after that. The president cited Mexico and Colombia's trade in illicit things and things that are, killing our Walmart parking lots into the U.S. as he continues threatening to overthrow the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. Mexico is the primary country for trafficking a variety of narcotics, including heroin into the U.S. Colombia is the largest producer of the heroin. And, of course, since early September, the Trump administration has launched 22 strikes on alleged with vessels in both the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific Ocean, resulting in at least 87 deaths. Sure, I would, Trump said when he was asked by Politico if he would consider using force against targets in other Latin American countries with highly active drug trades. A substantial U.S. military force consisting of naval warships, special ground forces, and has been deployed to the Caribbean to pressure Maduro's regime in Venezuela. We just actually covered that, of course, we flew 2 fighter jets into the actual territorial waters and into the airspace of Venezuela, not just in their ADIZ, their identification zone, but actually in their airspace, which I'm sure is easy to do since their airspace is now closed to everything else. So yeah, this is a pretty big development. Dex.
Well, I was thinking that, I wonder what Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum is thinking about this, because she just met President Trump for the first time, December 5th. They were sitting side by side at the FIFA World Cup draw at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. There was a whole lot of scenes of them 2 literally sitting in the stands side by side during all of that event. So I wonder, if you ever had an opportunity to talk to her and it's like, we might take out some cartels over there on your land. You're going to be okay with that? And I just wonder if she was like, yeah, come on, help me out. Or she's like, no, you can't, we're sovereign. You can't come into our country like that. So, he has threatened Mexico before. We saw the CIA controlled planes, the drone planes flying over Mexico territory. In the past, we covered that. There's a whole lot of U.S. military on our southern border. We claimed a lot of land and reclaimed a lot of land into military bases so that we had more territory on the edges of the border available for the U.S. military up against Mexico there. So I think, much like we've got the Navy sitting out on top of Venezuela, we probably have quite a bit of firepower sitting on top of northern Mexico there on our southern border. Not aimed at the Mexican government per se, but thinking about what it means to talk about these cartels as he refers to them as the primary target. So it just makes you wonder, like when, what else could happen? Venezuela's obvious. I think there's more to Venezuela than just drugs. I think obviously regime change, oil and natural resources, minerals, et cetera, are probably, as well as economics, just overall economics out of that country. That could be a huge boom for the US, which would also be a huge boom for China. So, if we flip that country away, then that's an overall net positive for the US.
I wanted to read one of these comments. Vanessa, California says, wait, when? I live on the border and it's been so crazy lately with the planes, and we have had the weird fog. I heard about your weird fog. Actually, I saw some pictures by a family member on Facebook, actually. I thought it wasn't normal. I live right by the border. I don't know what you're responding to. I wonder if somebody's making a claim there. But yeah, I've heard California down there has had a lot of weird stuff going on close to the border. Texas folks, if you're in Texas, if you're by the border, please let us know what's going on. Take pictures. If you have, of course, garage cams or door cams that catch something, send it to us. You can actually go to our website, contacts. If you have something good, please go to the tips page. And then again, you don't even need a email, but again, if you want us to get back to you and respond to you, then you have to leave something there. And then Ty Jazenzi, thank you again. Yeah, I would love to know what the heck's going on with that. And what was that fog? And then let's see here, mineral oil glycerin based fog. I don't know. Hopefully it's something natural, right? But I do know that they had, and then several places around had crazy pink and purple skies and all sorts of things. Lots of weird events happening. Look up Operation Sea Spray. I will, Mazza. I feel like I've talked about that. Let's see. Noticeably impacting people, and someone tested the rainwater in my garden group, and it was so many chemicals. Ilea, nice to see you here. Thank you for modding tonight. I appreciate that. And then thank you to everybody else that made it. J-Pass and so many other old school Fugel fams. 24-monthers in here. Billy Jack's Wild America, Kimbria, of course, and Stephen McMahon. Thank you. All right. And yeah, and by the way, Stephen McMahon, I watched a couple of the things on the Michael Yon, the ex-Special Forces guy. There's a lot of craziness. We're talking to a couple Special Forces guys in the Fugel fam. They believe that they actually agree with what's on screen right now. They believe that there is a land strike very, very soon. They're pretty much dead set on it. Well, we'll see. We're going to cover it as it comes along. So if you do want to catch everything as it comes out, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Make sure to also hype our video. I have no idea how that even works, but if you have points and you watch us every night and nobody else, use those points on us. I don't know what the heck it does, but hype us up. Be the hype man or hype woman. All right, Dex, thank you so much. I appreciate your service tonight. Thank you.
Much love and great job. And I'm going to figure out what some hyping is.
Dex, you don't have hype points?
I don't have. I've not seen hype points.
I got hype points. I can hype. I'll hype it. I got hype points.
I'm jealous. I want to hype now.
I'm gonna hype some people up tonight. I'm gonna Skype and hype. I've just talk to somebody online and make somebody's channel better, I guess.
The tube's trying to be cool, huh?
Yeah. Yo. All right, you guys, have a great night. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out. We will see you tomorrow. And if anything happens in the meantime, there will be emergency broadcasts over on Marfoogle News. Thank you for everybody that has made it today. Thank your mods by going over to marfoogle.com/friends. You, of course, have all of the mods there. Everybody, including Bobby Sue and Ilea and Wages World and everybody that you need to thank. Make sure to thank them in the chat. Rip Curl, all of the rest. Thank you. Haven't heard from Trinity. She is hopefully doing really well. Again, Trinity, wherever you are, love you. All right, guys. Be safe, be prepared, Marf out. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It is a shoutro. already knows we're all too old.